Ladies, gentlemen, we're running a little behind schedule. We're building up the anticipation. STEVAN, of course, here with Billy. Ladies and gentlemen, Novak News. It is 8:07 p.m. Stay tuned. A lot to talk about. Guys, here we are. We're live in the studio.
Good evening.
Topic of discussion tonight, Billy, Strata.
Strata fees. It's
Strata
everyone's worst nightmare. You know, moving into an apartment, paying a mortgage, and then getting hit with 4 big bills a year.
Yeah.
Strata, which I guess for a homeowner is something you're factoring in, just running expenses year on year. But apartment owners and strata title, everyone's chipping in.
Yeah, absolutely. So what is a strata? I mean, the strata title is a form of ownership, and it's common with apartments, townhouses, where essentially you've got a group of homes together with common facilities or property. Yeah, is the term to it within, and it's the management, and it's looking after. It's obviously forecasting along with updating those shared facilities, which generally lead into what is your strata levy. So tonight we're talking about strata levies. Billy, a lot going on around DY, but like when you drive up and down the streets.
Yeah, these ones in particular, running from sort of top to bottom with the beach. A lot of these ones where our fingers sort of running there and here and here. These were all built in the 60s, 70s, 80s. You know, within a 20-year window, you would have seen a huge influx of new stock to DY. A lot of it, when you drive down the road, looks like a blonde brick or a red brick, and I guess when you think about it, they're getting on.
They are.
They're old properties.
Built in the majority of them are built in the 60s, 1960 to 1970. So if you apply that to today, you're looking at 60, 50, 60, 70 years of age. A lot of these buildings, and this generation of buildings, exceptionally common, not only across the northern beaches but across most of Sydney. So it is coming to a point now that you drive up and down these roads behind us down to the beach, and you do see scaffolding up around. There's obviously people are worried what's going on.
Yeah.
Is it good? Is it bad? And then if you're a buyer, you're going in and viewing these properties, or even an owner, I should say, and you're seeing these levies, moving upwards. And is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? And that's what we're here to talk about.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's talk about, first of all, what actually is included in your strata rates, because I think buyers miss things included. They see the overall number and go, that's a lot of money. But as an example, there's things like building insurance, which you would pay for on your own if it was not a strata title. Whereas in this case, the building insurance is included.
Yeah. Your stratas, typically your quarterly stratas split into two main categories: an administration fund or an admin fund. And the other one used to be called a sinking fund, is now called a capital works fund. And ideally, they're two different things. The administration fund is more so aligned with the day-to-day running, the day-to-day kind of budgeting of the property and the maintenance of the property. The capital works fund is more like I like to say to people, a compulsory savings account. So it could be cash, or it could be held in assets, but it's more of a savings strategy for the building. And another thing I say before we jump into it is that a strata, in my opinion, is a really good thing if it's run correctly and it's proactive and you've got owners that care about it. It's a compulsory savings account for your apartment, for your building. Whereas if you own a home, something goes wrong, you've got to dip into your pocket. Unless you're budgeting for certain items, there's always maintenance to be done with a house. With an apartment or a townhome, your strata is that compulsory savings, so it's not so much a shock.
Yeah, that's well said.
You need it.
And I guess you got two different sort of approaches: a proactive type, which is sometimes going above and beyond what's required as a part of a 10-year plan, which is often the minimum. Everyone by legislation must have a 10-year plan for the building. There's people that sort of go above and beyond that and like to keep things reasonably tidy. That sometimes as well in the newer buildings, they run like clockwork and they've got professional management rather than just relying on the owner's corporation. And then you've got a reactive strata committee, and I guess that's someone that's generally reactive to work that needs fixing. Yes, they make the savings, but it tends to be a little bit more on a case by case basis when things pop up.
Yeah, and both have merits, absolutely. And as a buyer, it's hard to differentiate these in the marketplace. So a lot of times you might see two properties that are absolutely identical. Let's just say there are two identical properties, and there's a significant difference in the strata levies. Now, the properties could be in exactly the same condition with the exact same amount of things coming up in the building, work required to the building.
Yes.
But if you've got a proactive owners corporation, odds are the levies that you're looking at when you're going to buy that property are higher.
Yeah.
Because they're putting money aside, they're already tackling tasks, and as a buyer, you might actually be turned off and say, "Hey, look, why would I buy apartment A that has a strata levy of $1,100, where I can buy apartment B, which is exactly the same, it has a levy of $750 per quarter."
Yep.
So it's not always accurate to say that a higher levy means a worse property, because in 5 or 6 years, once things come into play, it could very well be that the one that was not left behind, but was more of a reactive approach, could see that if something wasn't addressed sooner, it's grown into a larger issue. So you've got to be smart at what you're looking at out there, and proactive doesn't, or reactive, a lower rate, does not always equate to a better property.
And with any building, the way they budget the financials, money can be raised in two different forms. One being a higher quarterly levy, where that builds savings. Again, that has its pros and cons. The other's raising money in a one-off occasion, like a special levy. I know that word rings red flags and alarm bells for a lot of people, but that's a one-off occasion where they raise those funds to meet the work needed. Across the beaches, we see for most of the buildings, the two big ticket items being probably balconies, and fire upgrades.
Yeah, right now, so the two common things, like Billy just mentioned, for those 60s, 70s builds are fire upgrades, so new changes to fire restriction, which means you've got to have smoke alarms in common properties, fire extinguishers, depending on how long the block is or the driveways are. Some need to have a hydrant put out the front.
Yeah.
So it's good to know if that's being done in the property you're buying. That's definitely something we're still seeing a lot of. Doesn't seem to be any kind of rhythm to how council's addressing that. It's just when they pull your number, I guess you're up.
You're up. And I guess these are the things you can look for in your open home inspections. This is a bit of a serious one, but this is a fire panel. They don't often look like this big. Normally, it's about half as big. You sometimes see these on the walls at the front of the entry. Once you're on the inside, these are like your HQ for your fire system. So if you can see fire exit signs, and you can see smoke alarms, and you can see this, that's typically what a fire upgrade looks like for a building. They're really expensive.
A little giveaway to me as well is when I'm in the properties, if you have a look at the smoke alarm, that's either in the common property, so that's in hallways, or within the actual apartments themselves, they're no longer allowed to just be a battery operated unit. It needs to have a power supply behind it as well. So if it's got a power supply behind it, it's been updated, and it probably reflects an updated fire standards of the property.
And I guess like your common areas as well, a proactive strata are generally updated there, what's required. As an example, balustrades is a really good example of that. Sometimes with the fire upgrades, they're actually required to have a hand railing at a certain height, have the signage, and then also have sometimes stair caps as well, so it's not sort of slippery. So these are some things that you can look for.
Yeah, definitely. And the balcony works typically comes back to the big bad word of concrete cancer or spalling, concrete spalling. What that is, everyone's probably heard of it. Most people think they know what it is, but essentially it's the reinforcement within the concrete when the building's built. It actually starts rusting, and it expands, and it cracks your concrete. Now, we live in obviously a coastal part of the beaches. We're right on the beach here. So again, an active owners corporation when you're close to salt air is vital as well, just in the maintenance of your property and the longevity of your property, which in not even in the long haul, but just in the medium, even the short term, improves the value of your property.
Yeah, and aesthetically looks so much better. Like as an example, same building, different balcony, balustrading, and it looks like they've updated it a little bit. There's huge value add here. Yes, it costs, but you do see a return on investment. Owners corporations take out loans to service this cost sometimes, or accumulate the savings as a project and save. but you can see it does look good, and I guess it's for a lot of these buildings, it's not so much if, it's more when.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, it's like a car. It's like anything. Everything involves maintenance. I say this to people, car people. I say to them, look, it's like buying. Imagine you went out to buy a 60-year-old car and it's got a reconditioned motor, a reconditioned gearbox, new brakes. You'd be like, wow, that's pretty amazing. But guess what? The car costs an extra $10,000 over the identical car. But the other car, the gearbox doesn't work. The motor has never had any major work to it. Something's going to happen.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's silly analogy, but
no, but it's true. It's just running costs.
Running costs.
Everything's
running costs.
Everything's budgeted in at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I had a good bit of advice from the boss the other day, how to work out what sort of semi-normal strata rates look like these days.
Yeah.
Because it's you walk through sometimes a 1-bedroom and the strata's $2,000 a quarter, and you walk through a 3-bedroom and they're the same cost. If you try and sort of just look at the value of the property, say it's $1 million, if you subtract a couple of the zeros, your strata's around that sort of $1,000 a quarter, $2 million, $2,000 a quarter, $3 million, $3,000. Just as a really generic, if you're going to butcher the numbers and just chop it up, that's not maybe a bad way to do it, but it does fluctuate. There is ups and downs. There's often calls as well for a lot of the stuff.
Absolutely. And your strata fees include a lot of things, like I've got a short list here, but cleaning, gardening. So if you've got a complex that has a lot of gardens or a lot of common areas, obviously the cleaning costs will be there. Repairs and maintenance, the ongoing and again, the day-to-day kind of things behind it. Insurances, like Billy touched on earlier.
Yeah.
Building insurance and other insurances around that.
Public liability.
Yeah. You've got utilities, so there'll be common electricity services, the hallways, the driveways,
Laundries,
water, items of that, and also the management fees of the strata company that you've got managing it. So all of those things fall into your strata levies as well, and they're all determined by the owner's corporation. Typically, you'll set that at an annual budget, generally at the AGM every 12 months.
Yep.
You'll have an annual general meeting, go through that and set a budget and address things that you want to look at with it.
Yeah. At the end of the day, that you can't avoid paying strata. That there is no there's no shared living where you don't pay anything.
No.
It's the same with a house. There's always going to be running costs. Sure, some are good, some are bad, a bit prickly, but it's then budgeted into price. So as a buyer, when there's obvious work, it's just budgeted into your buying price as well.
Yeah.
And for investors, tax deductible as an expense.
That's something I was just going to quickly bring up, is that you might be looking at buying a property which could have a special levy coming up to it. And typically there's two ways that's addressed during the buying or the selling process. Sometimes an owner will pay that levy so that it's not passed on to the purchaser. So come settlement, any outstanding levies are paid for by the vendor. That's the home seller. The other option can be that as a buyer, you can renegotiate the price, bring it down a little bit. It means that your stamp duty will come down a tiny bit, but also that those levies that you then contribute as the property owner, if it's an investment property, are tax deductible.
Yeah.
So there's other ways of tackling it. If there's work coming up as a buyer, have the seller pay for it, or two, you can pay for it and take advantage of some tax deductions as well.
Cover the topic tonight.
That's
rapid. Anything else, Fred?
No, mate, I think that's about it for tonight. It's only very quick, but guys, if you need more, we're all available, always available. Billy, myself, STEVAN, the team at Novak, any property needs, strata questions, even when it comes to leasing, what we can do. Happy to answer anything for you. And
we're fortunate to represent so many properties that are strata title. There's not much we haven't seen. So even if you're buying something, and the best place to start is downloading a strata report. Generally speaking, agents, and the owners organize those through a third party, and then get them supplied for the buyer. But strata reports like your best point of contact to go through all the information for the building. And then if you've got questions, just reach out, send us a message. Love to help. There you go. Have a good evening. Thank you.